Spotlight ETSU. I'm your host, Carrie Oliveira. Today we'll be speaking with Meg Stone, director of the new ETSU Olympic Training Site. Meg is an award-winning strength and conditioning coach and is a two-time Olympian herself. She also serves as the director of the Center of Excellence for Sports Science and Coach Education at ETSU. Thank you for joining us, Meg.
Thank you for asking.
We're so excited for you to be here. There's so much stuff I want to talk to you about. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about you. And so we were talking before we started filming about how it is that you came to be at ETSU. So how did you come to be at ETSU?
Oh, it's a long-winded story, but I came to the US as a scholarship athlete to the University of Arizona. I was there for 4 years as a scholarship athlete, and then I was invited to take the position as head strength coach. So I became the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Arizona and was there for a very, very happy 10 years, almost 10 years, not quite 10. Then I moved to Texas Tech in the same position for 4 years. I was at Texas Tech. And then I did this awful thing that people do, and that's fall in love. And I moved to Appalachian State University as a track and field coach there. And then after that, I was invited to come back to Great Britain as a national coach there, and I went back and spent some time back home. My husband was offered a job at the Olympic Training Center, so we moved to Colorado Springs. From Colorado Springs, we decided that we wanted to get back into coaching and really focus on sports science, and ETSU offered us that.
And so here you are.
So here I am.
So how long now have you been at ETSU?
This is now the start of midway through our 7th year, so almost 8 years.
That's a good long time. So as you were talking about, you became the first, I want to get this right, head strength and conditioning coach. You were the first woman to hold that position at, was it University of Arizona? University of Arizona. How cool is that?
Well, it was a challenge, to be perfectly honest with you. When I started my professional career after finishing up as an athlete, I really wanted to go into track and field as a coach. But then I was offered this challenge really from the head football coach. He said that 17 or 18 of the players had come up to his office and said, why don't you consider Meg Stone, or Meg Ritchie as I was at that time, Meg Ritchie as the head strength coach, because she's been helping us out a little bit in the weight room, and I really didn't even know that the position was up for, it was open. So I was approached by the head football coach, and I said, well, really, I want to be a track coach. And I remember him throwing out the challenge. He said, well, you know, there's no other woman in the country doing this. I thought for about, I thought 30 seconds. Okay, I'll give it a go.
You know what? I will take the challenge. So what kind of athlete were you? Are you?
I would, believe it or not, I was a thrower. I threw shot and discus. I threw discus in the Olympics.
I know a couple of shot putters. They're built very differently than you are. You're kind of tall and lanky for a shot putter, are you not?
Well, if you had seen me a few years ago, I was less lanky. I was, when I competed in Los Angeles in 1984, I weighed 240 pounds. Today I felt like 150.
Oh my goodness.
I've lost a whole person along the way.
No, seriously. So you were throwing things competitively?
Yeah.
Like in the Olympics?
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I threw in Moscow, of course. Moscow was when the US team boycotted.
Yes.
And then in Los Angeles in 1984. In Moscow, I was 12th. I made the final. I was the only Western European in the final. And then in Los Angeles, I competed as well as I possibly could that day. And I feel quite comfortable that I finished 5th.
Fifth?
I did not get a medal, but
fifth?
Fifth wasn't bad.
Of all the competitors, like in the whole wide world, literally. That's super impressive. So how far do you have to throw a shot put to be 5th in the world?
Well,
how heavy is that thing?
Well, the shot is about 8 pounds 13 ounces, which is 4 kilo. But my main event was, in pounds, it was 8 pounds.
That's like a bowling ball.
Yeah, about the same size.
Oh my
well, not the same size,
same weight.
The discus is a 1 kilo, which is 2 pounds 2 ounces, or 2.2 pounds. And really, the discus was my main event. That's what I threw in the Olympics.
Oh.
221 feet.
That's really far.
Or 67 meters.
That's a couple of football fields.
Not quite a football field.
Not 200?
221 feet.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am. That's really far.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure and enjoyable experience for me to compete for 12 years at that level.
Oh, that is so cool. And so I imagine then that's driven by strength, right? To being able to chuck anything, any distance.
Yeah.
And so how was it that you decided that you wanted to go from being an athlete to coaching athletes? I don't imagine that most athletes have the aspiration to coach.
Well, actually, it's quite amazing. Quite a few athletes do decide that coaching is an avenue. They've been so influenced by that, a role model as a coach, that they really want to get into coaching themselves. And it doesn't necessarily mean to say that if you're a good athlete, you're going to be a good coach.
No, I can imagine.
You've got to be, you've got to make that transition between you and it all being about you to being it all about them, your coaching. And that can be a difficult transition for athletes. I think I made that transition with a bit of difficulty, I must admit. I remember the first 2 years I was coaching, it was very difficult sitting in the stand watching an athlete, and I couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
You know? So it can be quite a difficult transition, but I really feel now, after, 20 years of coaching, I feel I've made that transition quite well, and I really enjoy now helping other coaches coach well.
So not only do you coach athletes, but you coach coaches as well. Yeah. The other thing I would imagine would be difficult about going from athlete to coach is sometimes, and this is the experience I have in teaching myself, is that I know something so well, and it's so very intuitive to me that coming to be able to explain the mechanics of doing it to someone else becomes very challenging. Like, what about this do you not understand? Or how can I make you understand what it is I'm trying to say? Is that part of the challenge also in going?
I'll tell you what really helped me was the very first year that I was coaching. A company approached me about doing a videotape way back in the 1984 period. And by doing that videotape, I really had to think of breaking down the throw, breaking down the biomechanics, piece by piece, and how am I going to teach this? Because this video was aimed at high school population. And how do I teach a high school kid to throw? And going from being an Olympian to teaching at that level really made me really think about how am I going to put this script together and be able to get these major points of technique over to a young person. So that really helped the very first year to be able to do that. I can
totally imagine, especially with given that high schoolers probably have way less experience. They don't have a frame of reference. So you're teaching them everything from scratch, which might be easier sometimes than having to unteach somebody who thinks they know what they're doing. Yeah,
that's probably one of the biggest challenges in coaching, is someone who approaches you with a technical problem. And it's very, very, very difficult to change that pattern that they have established.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's easier than others because people will be open, but other people, they feel the movement, and it's very difficult to get them to change.
Yeah, well, muscle memory is a thing, right? Like your body just learns how it's supposed to do something, and making your muscles forget how to do something, I can imagine, would be very difficult.
I think that's very, very true, because and really emphasizes why you should teach very good biomechanics from the very beginning. Because if you don't, you're going to set yourself up with a problem later on. So it's important that good coaches teach at the very basic level.
Fundamentals.
Fundamentals.
Fundamentals. So you were talking about how you and your husband had gone to Colorado to work at the Olympic Training Center there.
Yes.
And you ended up leaving because philosophically they were not...
We decided to leave because the United States Olympic Committee, which we have a very good relationship with, obviously, we have the Olympic training site here.
Right.
They had decided to put a lot, or the bulk of their focus, on athletes and coaches. And that's good, that's exactly where it should be if you're going to win medals. But unfortunately, one of the things that they did tend to downplay was the sports science side. The research, the sports science, just looking at how can we do things better? How can we research this so we can do it better?
I find that completely fascinating, because how are you supposed to know? Like, how are you supposed to engineer a human being to be able to perform to their maximum capacity if you don't understand how that works?
Well, that was our thoughts.
That seemed very intuitive to me.
And that's, I think, the Olympic Committee are very, very focused on the end product,
yes,
rather
outcome.
than the process.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we want medals in the Olympic Games, perhaps that is the way to go. But I feel that if you look at what China did before Beijing, they hired over 1,000 sports scientists, everything from sports psychologists to biomechanists to physiologists to work with their athletes. We had, in the Olympic Committee at that point, about 6 physiologists. So
that does not seem
yeah.
wise
and
at
yet
all.
We always tend to win the medal table. And as long as we're winning the medal table,
that's how we're going to keep doing it. If it ain't
yeah.
broke, don't fix it, as they say, right? So there's no
change
reason.
won't happen. And I think if we do, and hopefully we don't ever slip in the medal table,
right.
then a big review will happen. And that happened after Sydney with the Australians. After Sydney, they decided that they would do away with some of the support that they had been giving their athletes because they did very well in Sydney. Well, take a look at how they did in London.
Oh,
not so good.
Not good.
So I think when you take away those support units,
yes,
things do tend to diminish.
And so the appeal then of coming to ETSU is that we had a strong focus on the sports science.
Well, I think we brought that with us, to be honest with you. There was very little happening in the exercise science lab at the time. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe Mike was brought in, my husband, was brought in to revive that. And I think he's done that very, very well. So
we had the existing facilities there. Mm-hmm. So that at one point we did have an emphasis on sports science that had that fallen by the wayside. Yeah. And then when you all came in, you resuscitated it.
I think it was more an emphasis on exercise science, health and wellness and that kind of thing.
Ah, yes.
And not that the sports scientist is not interested in that. Of course we are, but our main focus is sport. How do you compete better in sport? And I think my husband says it very well, that when you turn on the news at night, you see weather, news,
sports.
And sport. So sport is a huge part of our society, and that's something that we really wanted to emphasize, is that how do you get better?
How do you get better at this?
And of course the US is an absolute world leader because we're top the medal table in every Olympics for the last, I think the last 4 or 5 Olympics.
Yes.
And we have such an emphasis on sports science in this country that it's really a pleasure to work in that area because it's really part of the entertainment business, really.
No, that's really true. I have a friend who is working on his PhD at Michigan State, and one of the things, his dissertation was on forms of sort of like appropriate cheating in sports. You know what I mean? Like a foul or whatever it is,
yeah.
like or traveling often doesn't get called when it should, and there's a certain acceptability about we're violating the rules, and that's just part of how we do it. But that enhances the entertainment value of the sport, and so it probably violates the competitive aspect.
Yeah, there's a very good sports psychologist up at Michigan State who's worked with the Olympic Committee, Dan Gould.
I think I've met him.
Yeah, Dan is really very good, done a lot of research on the psychology of competition.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine like being competitive. I'm not competitive at anything, like as a person. The only thing I did that was competitive is in high school. I did competitive speaking events, but I don't have any kind of frame of reference for like the intensity of competition that goes into sport. And I can imagine that being a very psychologically jarring kind of experience. Like your identity gets wrapped up in your success.
Oh yeah.
And it's very combative and oppositional. And I can imagine that there would be the need for a subfield of psychology that dealt specifically with the business of competition. So the Olympic, how did ETSU come to be an Olympic training site? How does that even happen?
Well, we decided a few years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, probably 4 years, that we felt that we needed an element in our sports science area that was of elite athletes. Not that we don't have good athletes at ETSU, we do have some very good athletes, but we did not feel that they were of the quality of an Olympic athlete. When you look at USC, University of Southern California,
Yes.
they have produced almost 40 athletes out of their intercollegiate athletics program that have gone on to be Olympians.
40?
That's the leading number in the country. And then, you know, if you look at places like, you know, we hate to make the comparison, but they're just down the road, you know, that university in Knoxville. They've produced quite a few Olympians from their program. Well, you know, taking a look around the country and looking at some of the University of Southern Carolina, South Carolina, North Carolina, they've produced Olympians from their program. Why not ETSU?
Why not ETSU?
So we were sitting around the table one time and I just said, hey, why don't we have an Olympic training site? Everybody looked at me, of course, like I had horns in my head. You would be kidding. You know, Olympic training site, what I said, well, think about it. National recognition,
yes.
International recognition. The five rings. The five rings are a well-recognized brand.
Absolutely.
They're probably as well recognized as Coca-Cola.
I would imagine.
You know, the association that they have with Coca-Cola, with Adidas at that point, all the big major international companies that are involved with the Olympic Games. Why not? Why don't we bring an Olympic training site here? Why can't we? Well, it was not quite as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. I talked to some people at the Olympic Committee, and we really tried to emphasize some sports that we were interested in. First of all, myself and my husband.
Right.
We were very interested in weightlifting. I had coached weightlifters. My husband has coached weightlifters, Olympians. I've coached a couple of girls that had medals in the World Championships when I was at the University of Arizona. So it was an obvious fit.
Sure.
My husband was also on the International Weightlifting Federation Sports Science Committee a few years back. So it was really an obvious choice. Not only that, one of the other things that was that led us to weightlifting was the fact that a lot of the Olympic movements and the derivative lifts of those lifts, or movements of those lifts, we use in strength and conditioning to condition athletes. So we thought that was good. But one of the things that I think we've got to look to in the future is the fact that we can't be just a one-route program.
Right.
If we have to have longevity, we need to look for other sports. And of course, what really clinched the whole thing was when Dr. Stanton gave us some scholarships for Olympic athletes. And that, of course, just that sent us over the edge. So myself, and I have got to say, Dr. Knight, the Dean of Clemmer College of Education,
yes,
he was absolutely phenomenal and relentless in saying to me, put this in the business plan, put that in the business plan, do this, do that, and he was just terrific. And really, if it hadn't been for Dr. Knight, we wouldn't have had a business plan put together, because this was my first jab at a business plan.
Right. And administration is a different animal than
coaching.
Pretty much anything else, yes.
So we got the business plan put together. We submitted it to the Olympic Committee. They liked it. We talked to the National Governing Body of Weightlifting, and the CEO of that liked our proposal. We wrote a memorandum of understanding. We went back to the Olympic Committee with that. The contract came back. So
much like bureaucracy.
Paperwork, you know, like everything else.
Everything.
And then it went to our legal department here, and I've got to say that Troy Purdue helped us with that, and Troy put his shoulder to the wheel and got that done. And all of a sudden, April, we were a designated Olympic training site in 3.5 years. And actually, Alicia McConnell, the young lady that's the director of all training sites in the US, said to me, you know, this is the fastest it's ever been done. I'm like,
It's 3.5 years, and that was fast.
Yeah, usually it takes 4 to 5 years.
Oh my goodness!
So we got it done.
So congratulations on being designated as an Olympic training site, but doing it quickly.
Quickly, yeah, we
relatively
did.
Anyway.
Well, we really kept our nose to the grindstone on it, and I'm got to admit, I think I'm making a few phone calls. It was like, oh no, not that woman again. So we just kept at it.
And now here we are. And so what exactly does it mean then to be designated as an Olympic training site?
Well, what it means is we're only one of actually 14 sites in the country. There are only 2 other sites, and so we're the third that support weightlifting. It means that we can hopefully support the dreams, ambitions of some of these young people. They come to school here on scholarship. They will work just as a normal athlete would, just as a normal student would. Coming in, so they train twice a day. And they,
twice a day?
Yeah, they come in at 7 o'clock in the morning and then they're back at 2 in the afternoon. And they've got homework and all that sort of stuff.
You have to have that much discipline to be elite, I would guess.
Yeah. And we're really very fortunate because we've had a lot of inquiries because, of course, weightlifting, the opportunity for weightlifters, female and male. In actual fact, we have more female lifters than we do males at the moment. So
that's so cool. We have some pictures of, I think, people in training. So this is the facility, part of our this. What are we doing in this picture? In
this picture we have a young man called Jared Burton. Actually, this young man is an intern at the moment at Lake Placid.
Oh!
He's up there and he's actually one of the ones that's being earmarked for the bobsleigh team up in Lake Placid.
That's cool.
He phoned me after he had his first run and he said his brains were rattling around inside.
I don't understand how they couldn't be. I mean,
going down that bobsleigh run. Anyway, what he's doing here is he was in a pulling motion where, and the same in this slide,
right.
A couple of our athletes. What we do is we try to test and monitor our athletes throughout the whole training process to make sure we know that they're making progress, they're getting stronger, they're becoming more powerful, they're more explosive.
And that's the importance of the science part of it, is the measurement and
we can tell
efficacy.
What their power output is, what their rate of force development is, what we call it, is how they can apply that power. The quicker you can apply power in a sport, chances are, if I apply power quicker than you, then I'm going to win.
You're going to win. That makes so much sense. Here we have a female weight. How much weight is that?
I think it's probably in the region of about 250 pounds. Yeah. What
has she done? How's she gotten up there?
She's just got from the floor. All she's doing is a high, and actually it's just a high pull motion. This young lady actually was a national champion. She trained with us here over Christmas last year. She was the national weightlifting champion in the, I believe it was the 95 kilo.
That's so much weight. And she came here specifically to train with us to be competitive at the national level. And here we have a class, it seems.
This is, every year we host, as part of the Olympic Training Centre, we have to have an educational component. And this is our Coaches College, actually, which is coming up on the 14th and 15th of December this year. And this is a young man, Greg Half, who is now in Australia teaching at Edith Cowan in Perth, talking about power output to some of our students and to many of the attendees at the college.
And I think that educational component probably is really important. Like, I mean, not only is it about teaching about the mechanics of the sport, but also the science behind. And so, again, emphasis on that.
This is the warm-up area, actually, at our meet last September this year. You can see, actually, the young man in the grey, the young man that's walking in front of us is Tim McGuinness, one of our coaches. And the ladies sitting there in the front, the two young ladies in the front with the person kneeling, are 2 of our weightlifters. This is just in the warm-up area, and in fact, this is just after the meet. We had a meet in September, and this is one young lady from our facility. This young lady is not on scholarship with us, but she's very interested in weightlifting, and I think she feels that she can keep her body weight under control by doing the weightlifting.
Yeah.
She's just finished a snatch movement, and you can see our banner at the back there, US weightlifting. And
yes.
We call it the Stone Age Classic.
The Stone Age Classic. Why is that? It just works.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, in addition to the Olympic Training Site, you are the director of the Center of Excellence for Sports Science and Coach Education. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a lot of words. And what exactly, and So I was trying to sort this out. That center does not provide an undergraduate program, but there's a PhD program.
Masters and PhD.
Masters and PhD housed under this program. And so this is different from our program in sports and leisure management and kinesiology and all of that.
The two departments are completely separate now. There's exercise and sports science department, which is where I work with the coach education and the sports science.
Right.
And the sport management and physical education, kinesiology are in a different department. Well, kinesiology really is really our area, but I'm not sure. There'll be some name changes coming up, I think. But the Sports Science and Coach Education Department, really, with the Centre of Excellence, my role there is to liaise with the athletic department and to really fundraise, because if you're going to do some research, obviously, and not so much research, but monitor athletes and test athletes, you have to have some equipment to do that with. And in fact, we're very grateful to Eastman's because we just received a grant from them to be able to purchase an ultrasound machine which really looks into all types of different muscle tissue that you have. And so we're looking at, I really do liaison with companies to be able to do that kind of thing, fundraise and just help the research and the monitoring and testing program that we have here.
So make the program viable, really.
Yeah.
That's
We're very fortunate actually because we have some very, very good students. And when my husband started the program, he said Dr. Bach and Dr. Gruby, Dr. McIntosh, all our upper level administrators really were very, very supportive, and I know they still are very, very supportive of that program. But they had challenged us. You have to have, by the end of your third year, 9 doctoral students. That's what our challenge
enrolled or
was.
Graduated?
Enrolled.
Okay.
By the end of the third year, you have to have 9 enrolled. Well, we're at the end of our second year, halfway through our third year, and we have 22 and a half.
We have half a person running around the program.
We have Brian Johnson, our head trainer, is enrolled, and he's doing it part-time.
Half-time.
So he's certainly a half count, but he's certainly not a half when it comes to the participation in our program, because Brian has been outstanding.
That is outstanding, and I think that's just all of that is a testament to the importance and the quality of what we're doing here on campus, which
it really is
you and your husband. And we actually invited your husband to come on. Mike, his name is, yes. And we invited him to come on, but he was unable to. And I think that would have been a really interesting conversation to have with the two of you. So kind of to come to the end of all of this, when you look at the 7 years that you've spent here and you came to do sports science, and what are you pleased with what you've managed to accomplish in the time that you've been here?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like we've been the mouse in the wheel.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel that maybe it's time for us just to slow down a tad. We've got things in place now. Let's really make sure that what we've got in place is working well and quality. I think we've been very, very fortunate in the support that we've had from, I mean, I could name every upper level administrator from Dave Collins, Wilsie Bishop. I could go through the lot of all of our upper echelons of the university. Dr. Stanton moved out, Dr. Nolan's come in. We could not have been supported more. We are very, very fortunate in the support that we've had here. And we came here basically to say, okay, we're going to work like mad for about 6 or 7 years and retire. Well, 6 and 7 years have gone and we're still here.
And you're still going. And we are so tremendously grateful. I'm impressed. When I got your resume to prepare for this interview, I was tremendously impressed with both you and your husband. I think you're making a wonderful, important contribution to ETSU, so thank you for that. Thank you for joining us, Meg. We have been speaking today with Meg Stone about her work on the new Olympic training site at ETSU and her numerous achievements as a strength and conditioning coach. Please join us next time on Spotlight ETSU.